Hello everyone, I am Karma from DIJ Tech. So in this lecture, I would be presenting about how to integrate your PayPal account with Node.js application. So to start with the lecture, I would start by explaining how and where and when we should use it. And for that, I'll be giving a brief walkthrough on the application that we currently have. We have integrated with PayPal account. So as you can see over here, we have three basic commodities to subscribe on. First one, basic, standard and premium. So clicking any one of this button, we would be able to redirect to PayPal and give out the subscriptions. For example, clicking on this submit button, we will be redirected to the PayPal form where we can fill out the information and then click continue to do the payment. So we are done over here. So the payment has been made. The first step to how to integrate the Node.js with PayPal account should always start with creating an account. So before we start an actual account with PayPal, we should have a development environment. We should be creating an account with a sandbox model. That means that we won't be working with the actual account but a dummy account, basically used by developers or programmers for testing purposes. And to set up this account, we have to go to this link, developer.paypal.com. So on the left hand side, you can see the dashboard. Under sandbox, click the accounts. Okay, so when you click accounts, you will be redirected to a page where you can create two PayPal accounts. Please wait for a moment as it's taking a bit of time. So here, when we are in this page, we have to create two accounts under PayPal. This is basically for testing purposes. First one is business, second one I'm going to create as a personal. So to create these two email addresses, click on the create account button. Here in this pop-up, you have to choose the type of account that you are going to create. For me, I'm going to use the business account first. Click on the custom create account. When you click on the custom create account, you would be redirected to this form. So fill out the form. Click the type of account that you want to choose. Enter the email address. It can be any email address. It can be invalid email address. This is for testing purpose. Enter your password, your first name, last name. Well, it's optional. Then you can put your balance income. It does not have a limit, so it's up to you how much you want to put inside your account. and then at the end you can click on the create account. Well, I already have the account, so I won't be creating it again. Same goes for creating the account for the personal account also. So after you have created your business and personal account, you have to create credentials. You have to create the credentials so that your Node.js application can connect to this PayPal backend server. So to create the REST API for PayPal, you can click on this create app. You have two options if you look here, sandbox and live. So when you are done with your sandbox testing your Node application, you can then move to your live application and you can click here and create your credentials. So right now I'll be working on with the sandbox model. Choose the sandbox model, click on create app, then after giving the name, select the type of app, choose the business account that you have created earlier, and then click on create app. So when you do this, you will have the credentials for that particular app name that you have created. So you'll have client ID and a secret ID. So these two IDs will be used inside your Node.js application. Now this is it for the setup in the PayPal. Next we'll try to set up the Node.js application for integrating the PayPal account. So basically I'll just be showing how it is done and how to go about creating those codes and integrating with the PayPal API, REST API server. So for that we have to use the SDK, PayPal Node SDK for Node.js. So go to this link or simply type PayPal Node SDK and go to the GitHub account and you'll have this documentation. Scroll down a bit and you'll see the steps for installation. Just type npm install PayPal REST SDK and then you'll have this package installed inside your application. So if you have installed your library, then it should appear here inside your packet.json. Here we have version 1.8.1 PayPal REST SDK installed. So the next step would be to import that library using the require method, and we have to configure the PayPal and connect it to the PayPal dev server using the client ID and the secret ID that we have generated. So to go about, inside your Node.js application, you have to require, then you have to choose sandbox model because currently we are working with the sandbox. Then input your client ID and secret ID over here. So with this, your configuration and the connection with the PayPal account will be complete with the Node.js. Then next we'll have a set of data. So you can see that this object contains the descriptions required or the product and its information. So this information may come from the database or from the form filling up the form and submitting to the backend side. For this case, we have to look at this, the return URL and the cancel URL. When you are submitting your data to the PayPal REST API, PayPal server, and when that particular process has been completed, it should return back to your own application. And this URL will be replaced by your application server URL. For example, if I'm working on localhost, this will be localhost, and this also will be localhost. So when you are deploying it to the production server, you have to change it to the production server link. So in this example, under transaction, you have a list of items and their prices. So this price will determine the amount that you want to charge the customer, and this will be the total. As you can see here is the list of the array of objects, so you can have many items under here, and the prices total should be given over here. For the example that I have prepared over here, this is the object that I have created. So when we submit the form, we get the price, and this form data will come from here. You can see this application under plan and pricing. You have three different prices: $8, $20 and $40. When you click submit over here, then this price will have that selected price. For example, if it's $8 over here, replace it by $8 here. The next part of the code would be to use the create API of the PayPal under payment. So what this does is that it creates a check, like it's like writing a check to the person and giving it to the bank. So the check will have the details and the amount that you're going to give to your customer. The customer is going to pay to you. So just include that over here. The object should be here, and then the return function is placed here. So we have two parameters, error and payment. For example, if the passing parameter is having an error, or we are not giving data required formatically required by the PayPal REST server, then will be thrown an error. And if the payment is if the creation of the check or the payment is successful, or if it is verified by the client, then we'll have this in the else section statement. So in the payment object will contain the information about the payment, the description, and then the URL, the callback URL to the PayPal account, and that is where we are going to focus. So we have to do this first. So PayPal payment create, and then passing the parameter. Then if it is successful, it will console log create payment response. So I'll add an extra line of code to demonstrate what the return data will be. So I'm going to console log this payment. So in the terminal, run the server. Okay, simple error. I'll just change the port, as this 5000 port is currently under use. I'll go to 5002 to see if this port is not used currently. The server is running. Now let's see on the local host. It's 5001. It's going to take a bit of time. I think the server is running. So in the meantime, I will show you the next step of how to proceed on creating the PayPal payment here. Well, now that we have created the check, usually what the person who receives the check will do is he will go to the bank, and then the bank will process the check and verify it, and then the payment will be done. So the same concept applies over here. Now that the payment is created, you have to execute or process this payment. So in here you will not find the code for execution, but then we have to go inside the folder sample, and then inside sample you have to go inside payment and then execute.js. If you go here, you'll see that you have execute payment.json. Well, the total, we have to give the amount, we'll need the payment ID, and then we'll need the execution JSON should be passed through the execute REST API. And then if there is no error in the payment ID and this object, the payment would be created. I think I'll start the server once more time. So I'm using WSL to run the Node.js application. It's a Windows subsystem for Linux. So this is WSL2. So I'll go inside my current application, and then I'll start Node. Then I'll run the app.js. Server is running. It's in port 5002. I think this was the mistake. I was trying to run it on port 5001. So this 5002 port is working. We can go inside the plans and pricing. When we click over submit over here, it would be redirected to the pay URL, and then the payment would be created, and if it is successful, we would be able to see the log of the response in here. So I'll try to click here. Let's see here. So we are getting the response in here. So in the response we are having the ID, the payment method is PayPal, the amount it's given as an object, created time, and most importantly we have to focus in the links. So under link we need the approval URL. We have to redirect the application to the approval URL. So currently if you see here, it is already been redirected. So we have to run a code or make a code so that we can extract this link and open this or redirect the application to this link. So in here it comes a simple JavaScript using a filter function method, filter method. So we are going to use this with a fat arrow function. So we have filter for firstly we'll be using this filter in payments.links. That means for this array of objects. We have to keep in mind that filter will work only with arrays of objects. And then inside the data, well, it's just a variable to replace the individual values of the array. So currently this data will contain this objects. So we have to loop through this object, and this is automatically done by filter method. And we have to check if the data.rel is equal to approval, and if it is, then we'll get that particular object and then fetch the href here. And then after that we return the value to the front end side, and then the front end will open the URL and redirect it to this here payment. Now we have to log in. So here you will be redirected to this page where you have to enter your personal PayPal account that we had created earlier. I think we created in here. We created two accounts. One was business and another one was personal. So we have to log in with your personal account. Click on login. Once you have clicked login, you will see that you have $8 over here. This $8 comes from here because we selected $8. The PayPal will automatically pick up this $8 by the object that we have sent. So you have different options. So basically this is done using the create method of the PayPal REST API. So click on continue. Then after clicking continue, the return URL will be the URL that you define over here. Currently we have dev server 1, so we have to replace this by by localhost 5002 and give a success URL. And if you cancel, we have to give a cancel URL, so to avoid any errors. So next it would be redirected to success. Click here. So you can see over here we are redirected to success, and we have a couple of parameters. You see on the URL we have payment ID, and then we have the player ID here. So we have to use this. And the requirement for player ID and payment ID is basically for authorizing the user and confirming the payment. So this create REST API creates the check or payment, and that payment is executed by the execute REST API. So you fetch the payment ID and the player ID from the URL using query method. So we have request and response. So inside request we have query, and on query we can just do a simple dot operator to get the parameters. So we have to put the price over here, the total price, which comes from here, and then lastly we pass these parameters. Then if the payment is successful, we'll do a response.send, which means that the response will be as an HTML response. So we'll see the data like here. This is the response that we are getting. So the payment is successful. As you can see, HTTP port code 200, HTTP status is 200, and if you skim through here, you'll see the various informations that was required for the payment. So from the personal account of PayPal, the player ID this, and the recipient is business@gmail.com. The total amount is $8. The currency is USD, and you can see that the dev server automatically creates the shipping addresses in here. And at the end you can just use this information and store it inside the database however you want. So this is all for the tutorial on how to connect the PayPal account with the Node.js server. And thank you, and please stay tuned for the next